Good morning. My name is Scott Redler, Chief Strategic Officer of T3Live.com.
And I'm Chelsea Oliver. Welcome to today's morning call. We have mixed markets around the world again. Asia lower overnight, while most of Europe is actually up by 1% or so. Kind of seems like we're taking on their lead today, right?
Yes, it feels like every morning our markets will adapt to wherever we want to go with the futures. And Europe is up 1%, and yesterday it was kind of like a flip-flop. So it seems like at least every region around the world isn't just trading together, where it's in pure symmetry, so everything's on their own. And if you look real quickly at the FXI, which is the ETF pretty much for Asia, I don't think it's that big of a deal. That's why we're not really, obsessing over the fact that it's having another down day. I would think that the FXI into this spot, should be viable. Look where it came from and look at the peak. So into the 21-day, that would have to hold. Otherwise, I think then perhaps, we would notice over here. If you look at the EWG, okay, which is a proxy for Germany, after its move that it just had, you had one down day, and look at this, right on the 8-day, and now we'll see whether or not the EWG will take out this little 2450 spot, to take it back to the weekly highs. And then really, just like our market has an open gap, the EWGs have an open gap all the way up to here. If, the ECB tomorrow with Draghi happens to be, stock friendly versus a disappointment like last time.
S&P futures are up 12 to 14 handles today after holding the 8 average moving day yesterday. Do you think this gap will hold up?
I think a lot of people are probably a little annoyed by this gap because we did have like our first real down day yesterday, so more downside follow through would have been good. But like you said, we held our 8-day moving average, which has pretty much been the roadmap for the past few weeks. So as long as that holds, I think you got to be looking long. So with today's gap up, if you're short overnight, perhaps you fade a little bit into the first 30 to 60 minute move. If you were long overnight and you bought into the 8-day moving average, you sell some and you keep trading around it. If you go here to the SPX, you'll see that here is the 8-day moving average. Okay, this is ever since we had our double bottom right here. Okay, you had your first initial move higher. It's pretty much been using that as a roadmap. Okay, this was your move into resistance. Here was that red dog reversal, and then we pretty much followed this 8-day moving average, to a T. On Friday we got a little extended from it, right? A little extended. The oscillator got to plus 90, so we broke this small ascending channel, but closed and held right here. So at this point, gapping up might be a little tricky for traders. I know I'm short a little bit from actually after hours yesterday, so what I'll probably do is fade a little bit. But if we happen to get above yesterday's highs and close above it, which is 1996, I'll probably have to cover and figure out what's next. If you remember in the recaps, I've showed you this chart here of last year's double bottom, where you had a very similar pattern. Here was the one low, here was the next low, came up into resistance, first time pushed through, held it, and then look from about 1999 all the way up to, what was this? This was 2102. It held the 8-day moving average, meaning rally up, maybe too extended, you get short. Instead of shorting the 8-day, you bought it, 2 up days, engulfed it, came into it, engulfed it, came up to it, all the way. So if you want to use that as a blueprint, until it really changes, here we are with this double bottom, all the way up, first move lower. So we'll see what happens here if yesterday's high gets rejected or reclaimed. So for me, who's a little short, I'm going to short Versat, but if it pushes through it, I might be done, because then the next move, could be to take out this 200-day, which is right here, and then you have that unfilled gap that I showed you, even with the EWG, which comes up a little bit closer to this 2040 area. So the last thing I want to do is be caught short in a pain trade like most people are since here, which was the last time they got engulfed at the 8-day.
Oil is up this morning after having a down session yesterday. Will you have all eyes on that 1030 number this morning?
Yes, because yesterday you had your first down session, and today it's right back up. Right. We've been having these big builds. So if today, which has been the opposite, usually we've been down into this 1030 number, now we're up. If that happens to be another build, maybe it comes in a little bit, and then maybe we'll get that little bit of a fade in the overall market, the oil market as well. So if you look at the USO, all you had yesterday, is one down session, and it didn't even get to the 8-day. So holding the 8-day is strong. This had one day. So at this point, it's up a little bit. I would use this as your stop if you're short. This stop in the USO is 1015. If it gets above 10.15 and holds above it, and you're short from yesterday, just get out of the way because it can see higher prices. You look at the XLE which trades with oil. It had a pretty big engulfing down bar, into the 8-day after the calculated move from 58.20. So at this point, I would think some guys might look to re-short the XLE because of the size of the move. If you want to take a quick little look here at the actual 5-minute to see where resistance comes in. So I would say, from where we opened up at 62.60 all the way down to here, if the shorts want to remain in control of at least today, I would say this 60.80 to 61.15 could be shortable for at least a little bit more of a rest.
Small caps finally had a down day yesterday, so will you be looking to sell their strength today?
I think some traders probably went out short there too, because after 7-8 up sessions, you finally had a down day, so you thought maybe to get some follow through. So if the future's up, it could be an opportunity. It could be a little painful if you're short or tricky, but it could be something that opens up and you could sell some of that strength if the sellers do come back. If you look here at the IWM, you'll see there are times to be big, times to be small, times to not be involved. Well, the time to to accumulate a long once the 8 and 21 day held was probably around here, and then you had a big move up. And yesterday, what did it do? It opened lower and engulfed and traded below this. So I would think some people probably like, maybe it gets to the 21 day, maybe it just gets to the 8 day. Well, now it's up a little bit. So it's just like the XLE. What I would do today is I'd go to your 5-minute chart and see perhaps where there is some resistance that if it sees some sellers there, I would say this is 1 and this is 2. So I would say if the sellers want to stay in control for at least a few sessions, this 107.40 to 107.80 should be fadeable versus buying here. But if this gets taken back and it starts to get engulfed, I would definitely be a bit more careful with short on the brain there.
Yesterday, high beta tech perked up a bit. Stocks like Google, Amazon, Netflix. Is it important for them to hold today?
These stocks have been kind of weird. Last week when the market took off and kept going, they got weaker, and then you had downside follow through on Monday. And then yesterday, with the futures lower, they were the first things to go green. So like Chelsea said, they perked up and they were a good trade, and a lot of them took back the prior lows. The question is, can they reclaim those broken ascending channels? So with the futures up today, we'll see if sellers come back or do they hold. And if they hold, chances are the market's not going to see too much of the downside after the open. You look at Google, the chart, you'll see that it did. This is your 15-minute chart, by the way. Let's go back to the daily now. We had this ascending channel break. Okay, so all in all it did is at first time hold support here, and then faded at the moving averages. So I think for today it'll be important to see does Google pop back above 727 or not, and stay on the right side of this ascending channel. You could almost do the same thing for all these high beta tech names. I think Chelsea also mentioned Amazon. So if you look at Amazon, you will see here's when it broke its ascending channel, but after 4 down days, there was a little bit of support here. Doesn't mean it's going to be blasting off again, but at least there was something. So same kind of thing here. Does it stay on the right side of this channel or not? I would say for resistance, yesterday's high is about 571. And then Netflix has been definitely a little erratic, but similar pattern where you had this ascending channel where actually it didn't really, this got close to breaking, it didn't really break it actually, and will it stay on the right side of it? So I would say use yesterday's high of 98.28. If you happen to be shorted, gets above and stays above, be careful, because then here's your next level. If it opens up and just gets rejected, that'll add probably some more fuel to the bearish argument that these high beta tech trades are to be sold on strength and carefully bought on weakness.
Facebook showed strength in the social media group yesterday. Will that be a focus for you today?
I like to trade Facebook. Yesterday I actually made money, buying and using the red dog reversal tactic we talk about all the time.
Yeah.
And and it's part of that group, and we'll see what happens today. If you look at the chart of Facebook, it too has this ascending channel that wound up breaking to the downside. So if you go here, let me see if I could grab my trusty pencil. Okay, boom. This is when it kind of broke on Monday when it took out this 108. So then yesterday, I talked about could it hold the prior low. It was a little bit below it. This was 104.72, went to 104.40, so 30-cent risk for what wound up being a few dollar move before fading down. So, question is, does it go sideways and then take this out and continue to the upside, or does it open up today and go red? And if that's the case, you're going to see some more bearish talk about these stocks that have these ascending channels. But if it could build here, it could be better off for the overall market. And I'll give you one more name in social media. Look at Twitter. Twitter has been battered and bruised, for such a long time. Look at this. This was as high as 50. So it did give you a little counter trend move. It was actually even tradable for us. Why was it tradable for us? Because we like tight patterns. And if you remember, this small tight pattern right here, which had some commitment to the washout lows, here was your buy. And then on this topping tail, most sold it, including me. So now the question is, can you be a buyer back into here for it to be relevant? But if it starts getting much below yesterday's low of 1833, I think guys are just going to start avoiding it. So there's some tactical trades in this Twitter, but you have to make sure it's a key setup. And right now, maybe this dip is buyable.
We have metals, which so far in 2016 have been shining,
Yes,
but now they are getting a bit more choppy. What do you think the support level in gold should be?
If you remember last week, I was like, I'm a seller on that topping tail in the GLDs, and that wound up being, a good sell. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes you get lucky when you sell strength, and sometimes it continues to go and you start crying, which happens to me all the time. So now the question is, have they lost their luster a little bit? After a big move like we've seen, maybe. Here was that topping tail. Remember, we drew this here, and then it looked like it was going to hold in. Then yesterday you had a weak session. Now it's down this morning. All right, the GLDs have been above, the 8-day moving average, for a long time now. So, instead of having an opinion, say, okay, does this trend hold? And in order for this trend to hold, you would think that this spot, maybe they play with it a little bit, but this 119.62 spot, gets played with a little bit. It got played with here, and that's still only last time. So if it doesn't hold this, some of the quick active momentum might get taken out, and then you'd have to watch the 21-day. And while I'm talking about gold, let me quickly talk about bonds and the TLT. TLTs started really strong yesterday, and I talked about, will it be a third lower high? Well, one lower high, second lower high, third lower high. So you have this descending channel of resistance. So now it's opening, filling this gap. So at least if you shorted into resistance, you're getting paid today. The same thing if you took out gold short in the down move, you're getting paid. So now, this will be key moving forward. But so overall bonds is telling us, not too much here today, except for, a third lower high and, not ready to explode.
Any more closing thoughts for us today?
Well, I feel like maybe there's a few other, notables that I'll mention, but,
Sure.
Try not to get it too crazy out there with too many names. Chipotle was in the news about how one or two of their workers got sick, so the stock's down like 14 points. It had a big rally off the lows as started to quiet down. I would think if you look at Chipotle to see if there's an opportunity here, this spot is some support. So I would look to see if this 495-ish area holds. That's pretty big, considering it just hit as high as 542. So that's about 40 points off the highs, but be careful what news plays. I think Apple, has been acting a little bit better. It's been broken for some time now. You have this ascending channel here that broke to the downside, and then you had this little rounding bottom that broke to the upside, and now it did hold the 8-day. And we'll see what kind of bounce happens today. I probably wouldn't buy this strength, but let's see if it holds. And all in all, Chelsea, I think that this is a tricky time in the market where we've had a big rally, and we're not really pulling in that much. So there's a small chance we continue, but I wouldn't sink your teeth in long. And if you try and just be short, make sure you try and give yourself a stop. Like, so for me, I'm a little short this morning. I added pre-morning call like 119. I think I'm 199.80s, and I'll do more versus a 30-minute high. But if we take that out, I'll wash my hands of it and figure out if I can make some money tactically long and just take it easy. It's only Wednesday.
That's right. Well, everyone, that's it for us. Have a great trading day.